Have you ever felt it? A strange, creeping exhaustion that has nothing to do with being tired. A low hum of anxiety in a world designed for comfort and convenience. It's the feeling you get in the quiet moments after a long day, when the screen's cold light illuminates your face, scrolling through an endless feed of curated perfection. It's the pressure in your chest on a Sunday evening, the ghost of another productive week already demanding its due. We live in the most abundant, technologically advanced, and safest period in human history. We have solved problems our ancestors couldn't even name. Yet, we are haunted by the sense that we are trapped, not in a prison of iron and stone, but in an unseen cage. A cage with no bars, whose walls are built from our own ambitions, our calendars, our 5-year plans. It's a cage constructed from a single, powerful idea, that every moment of our lives must be useful, that every action must be an investment, every hour accounted for, every choice optimized for a future gain that never quite seems to arrive. We are told this is freedom, the freedom to achieve, to produce, to become the best versions of ourselves. But if this is freedom, why does it feel so much like a debt? What if the systems we built to serve us are now the masters we serve? What if our relentless, suffocating pursuit of utility is not a virtue, but a form of tyranny? And what if the only way to understand it, the only key to this invisible cage, lies hidden within a dark, primal, and terrifying human need we have tried for centuries to forget? The need for useless sacrifice. To understand the nature of our cage, we must travel back in time. Back to a world not of quiet desperation, but of roaring, ecstatic, and violent devotion. A world drenched in sunlight and blood. We must go to the heart of the Aztec Empire, to the magnificent city of Tenochtitlan, a jewel of engineering floating on a lake, its markets bustling with life, its canals mirroring a sky of impossible blue, and at its center, great pyramids that tore at the heavens, temples painted in brilliant colors, monuments to gods both beautiful and terrifying. Here there was no unseen cage of productivity. The organizing principle of this entire civilization was something far more primal. The Aztecs lived in a state of permanent cosmic debt. Their primary deity, Huitzilopochtli, was the god of the sun and of war. He was not a gentle, life-giving father, but a warrior, locked in an eternal, daily battle against the forces of darkness. Every single dawn was a victory, but a victory that drained him of his strength. And if he were to fail just once, the sun would go out. The stars, monstrous demons, would descend and devour humanity. The world would end. How do you repay a God who holds back the apocalypse for you every morning? With prayers? With gold? The Aztecs believed the price was far higher. The sun god required the most potent and vital substance in the universe: human life, human blood. They called it Chalchihuatl, the precious water, and they offered it to him, not in ones or twos, but in a torrent. The scale of the ritual sacrifice is nearly impossible for the modern mind to comprehend. At the consecration of the Great Pyramid, thousands were sacrificed over 4 days. This was the engine of their society, the terrible beating heart of their universe. It is easy for us to recoil, to label this as simple, primitive barbarianism. But to do so is to miss the terrifyingly profound logic at work. This immense expenditure of life produced nothing. It did not build their canals, it did not grow their corn, it did not increase their wealth. It was not an investment. In the language of our modern world, it was the most inefficient,
unproductive, and wasteful act imaginable. And that was the entire point. It was a spectacular, horrific, and glorious act of giving back. A society burning its most precious resource in a desperate, frenzied attempt to pay an unpayable debt to the cosmos. It was a civilization organized around a single, awesome principle: that the greatest act is not to accumulate, but to expend, and that the most powerful force in the universe is not creation, but a sacrifice for no earthly gain at all.
How does a society function on a principle so alien to our own? How could an entire civilization embrace a logic of pure, unadulterated waste as its highest calling? For an answer, we must turn away from the sun-scorched pyramids of the past and into the smoke-filled cafes of 20th century Paris. We must enter the mind of one of its most challenging and brilliant thinkers, Georges Bataille. Bataille was not a conventional philosopher. He was a librarian and archivist by day, but by night, he was an explorer of the forbidden. He was obsessed with the aspects of human life that polite society and even traditional philosophy tried to ignore: the ecstatic, the erotic, the violent, and the sacred. He looked at the chaos of the world and saw not a system that had broken down, but a different kind of system altogether, one operating on a hidden, more powerful set of rules. To understand our world, Bataille argued, we first have to understand that we are living within a restricted economy. This is the world as we know it. It's the world of business, of science, of politics. Its fundamental assumption is scarcity. There is never enough time, never enough money, never enough resources. The goal, therefore, is to produce, to acquire, to save, and to invest wisely, always with a view to a useful future return. It is the common-sense world of cause and effect, profit and loss. But Bataille proposed a radical, mind-altering shift in perspective. He argued that if you zoom out from our individual lives and businesses and look at life on a planetary scale, the fundamental problem is not scarcity. It is the exact opposite. It is excess. He called this overarching system the general economy, and its engine is the sun. Think of it. The sun radiates a colossal, incomprehensible amount of energy into space, endlessly, demanding absolutely nothing in return. It is the ultimate act of giving without any possibility of repayment. This solar energy is the source of all life on Earth. It is lavished upon us without condition. This excess energy flows into the biosphere, creating more life than can possibly be sustained, resulting in a ceaseless, bloody cycle of growth, predation, and decay. Life, Bataille realized, is fundamentally a story of luxurious, uncontrollable surplus. This surplus, this energy that is always left over after the needs of basic survival are met, he gave a famous name: the accursed share. It is accursed because it is a problem that must be solved. This excess energy, this wealth, this sheer vitality cannot be contained forever. Like water building behind a dam, it must eventually be released. And a society has two fundamental choices for how to expend its accursed share. The first choice is the rational one, the path of the restricted economy. It can use the surplus for growth, build more cities, raise bigger armies, develop new technologies, and expand its reach. It is the path of accumulation. But the second choice is far more dangerous and profound. A society can choose to destroy the surplus, to obliterate it in a spectacular, sovereign, and useless fashion. It can be spent on magnificent luxuries, on decadent art, on wild festivals, on catastrophic wars. And in its purest and most terrifying form, it can be expended through sacrifice. Suddenly, the Aztecs don't look so illogical. They look like masters of the general economy. Their entire society was a finely tuned machine for the ritual destruction of their accursed share. Their sacrifices were not a miscalculation. They were a desperate and deliberate attempt to solve the fundamental problem of cosmic excess, to give the terrifying, uncontainable energy of life back to the source from which it came. And this reveals the true meaning of the tyranny of the sun. It is not just the ancient fear of the sun god's hunger, it is the inescapable condition of life itself. The sun's constant, unconditional gift of energy is a form of tyranny because it forces upon us this accursed share, this explosive surplus that we are condemned to deal with. And in our modern world, we have created a new kind of tyranny. By dedicating ourselves exclusively to the restricted economy, to endless growth, to ceaseless productivity, to the gospel of usefulness, we have attempted to deny the existence of the accursed share. We pretend that the dam will never break. We live in terror of waste, and in doing so, we have built a world that denies a fundamental law of the universe and a fundamental need in ourselves.
So, if Bataille is right, if every society is stocked by this explosive surplus, a simple question arises. Where did our accursed share go? In a world that prizes efficiency and rationality above all else, in a world without stone altars and sun gods, where does all that excess energy flow? The unsettling answer is that it hasn't gone anywhere. We haven't abolished the primal need for expenditure. We've just driven it underground, where it festers and erupts in new, distorted, and often profane forms. We have simply become experts at sacrificing without ever calling it by its name. Look at our wars. We justify them with the cool logic of geopolitics and national interest. But seen through Bataille's eyes, modern warfare is the ultimate festival of unproductive expenditure. It is a catastrophic bonfire of the accursed share. We take the finest products of our society, our young people, our most advanced technology, trillions of dollars of accumulated wealth, and offer them up to be annihilated for abstract concepts like freedom, honor, or a flag. There is no greater or more horrifying spectacle of glorious waste than a modern military conflict. It is a sacrifice on a planetary scale, a ritual of destruction that even the Aztecs would find breathtaking. Look at the logic of our consumer economy. We are encouraged to see our purchases as investments, but the pinnacle of our system is luxury. The multi-trillion-dollar luxury industry is built entirely on the principle of useless expenditure. To buy a watch that costs more than a house, or a handbag that costs more than a car, is not a rational act. It is a symbolic sacrifice of wealth. It is a public declaration that you have so much surplus, so much of the accursed share, that you can afford to burn it on something with no practical function beyond its own status. It is a potlatch ceremony held in a designer boutique. Look even at the strange theater of celebrity. We pour our collective energy, our attention, which is the great currency of our age, into building individuals up, elevating them to the level of modern deities. We grant them an enormous share of our collective surplus, and then we wait. We watch intently for the slightest mistake, the moment of weakness, and when it comes, we participate in a gleeful collective ritual of destruction. The public shaming, the career annihilation, the digital mob. It's a bloodless sacrifice, a scapegoat offered up to the algorithm to purge our own envy and anxieties. But perhaps the most insidious and personal form of modern sacrifice is the one we celebrate as a virtue. It's the one we see in the mirror every morning. It is burnout culture. The endless grind, the glorification of exhaustion,
the belief that sleep is for the weak and that self-care is a luxury. The Aztecs offered the hearts of their captives to keep the sun moving across the sky. We willingly offer our own well-being, our time, our health, our relationships, our sanity, to the abstract, insatiable god of productivity. We sacrifice the present moment for a perpetually deferred future. It is a slow, methodical act of self-immolation on the altar of our own calendars and career goals. We have, in a final tragic irony, become both the priest and the victim, sacrificing ourselves to the very system of utility that promised to set us free. We are still a sacrificing people. We have just lost the courage to admit who our gods are.
We began this journey in the quiet anxiety of our unseen cage and traveled to the roaring, bloody altars of the Aztec Empire. We sought the wisdom of a philosopher who dared to look at the sun and see not just a source of life, but the source of a fundamental, terrifying problem. And now we are left with an uncomfortable truth. The tyranny of the sun is not an ancient superstition. It is the central, hidden crisis of our modern world. The sun god is no longer in the sky, demanding the hearts of others. It is inside our own minds. It is the relentless internal voice that demands every moment be productive, every action be an investment, and every part of our lives be justified by its utility. We have silenced the drums and torn down the temples, but the sacrifice has not ended. It has simply turned inward. Our civilization, in its frantic attempt to deny the law of expenditure, has become a machine for turning human beings into fuel. We sacrifice our peace for productivity, our relationships for career advancement, our planet for perpetual growth. The Aztecs knew the name of their god. We, however, perform our daily sacrifices without ever acknowledging the altar, pretending our exhaustion is a virtue and our anxiety is the price of success. There are no easy answers here. The solution is not to rebuild the pyramids. It is something far more difficult. It is to reclaim the value of the useless. It is to consciously make space for the part of ourselves that creates, plays, and loves without asking, what's the point? It is to engage in art for its own sake, to celebrate with no agenda, to give without expecting a return, and to rest without guilt. It is to recognize the accursed share within our own lives and to find beautiful, sovereign, and sacred ways to expend it before it consumes us in quiet desperation. The modern world has taught us to ask what we can gain from every moment. But the far more important and far more human question is what we can give. In a world that demands everything have a reason, the greatest acts of freedom are those that have none. The choice is not and has never been whether or not to sacrifice. That is a fundamental condition of existence. The only choice we have is what or who we place upon the altar.